Hello and welcome to Out of India Theory. Hope you guys are doing well and a very happy new year. So we're going to begin the year 2025 with a very exciting podcast, once again related to one of my favorite topics, which is UFOs and aliens. So my guest today is Stephen Bassett. He's a political activist and a lobbyist dedicated to advocating for the disclosure of information on UFOs and extraterrestrial life. And he's the co-founder of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance and the executive director of the Paradigm Research Group, which is a non-profit that provides education, consulting, analysis, and political activism for a post-disclosure world. Steve, thank you so much for joining, and how are you doing?
I'm fine. It's been intense. There's a lot happening. We're close to achieving the goal that we've been seeking for 77 years, and that's a good feeling.
Yeah, I've been watching some of your other podcasts, and you mentioned that we are on the finish line. This is like the final stretch almost. So do you really think, now that we are in 2025, do you really think that is true? That's a real possibility? Because it's sort of, started with all the, the New York Times video of the unknown, and then the whistleblowers, and then David Grusch and Elizondo and all these people, and then finally with this whole New Jersey sightings happening. So maybe that's a good point to start off the conversation. What do you think happened at the end of 2024 with this New Jersey sighting? And I believe it's still going on.
Oh, it's not just New Jersey. These plasma-like craft and other things have been swarming around facilities going back almost 2 years. One of the first indications of this was a video that emerged with a swarm going around one of our warships off San Diego. And the only reason I think it got out is that many of the sailors on the ship probably had phones, and they filmed it. And they didn't get all of them.
Right.
So something made its way home into the internet. And I didn't know what to make of it. But there's so many things that have been coming forward, so many examples of extraordinary sightings. What do? I know the ETs are here. The government knows the ETs are here. So what's one more video? But that was probably the early stages of something far bigger. The video in question actually turned up later at the first hearing on the issue since 1968. This was May 17th, 2022. I think it was the subcommittee of the House Armed Services Committee, I believe. And this first hearing since 68, 54 years, brought the two people that were leading the UAP task force up to talk and answer questions about the UAP task force and what's going on. It wasn't much. They didn't have much to say. They disappointed, certainly, most people. And the most remarkable thing, though, was that video about the whatever the hell it was swarming around that ship was brought in, and it was shown. And I said, why on earth did they do that? Well, I think it was Bray, if I'm not mistaken, that talked about how, well, no, we'll check this out, and it's an angle of light and so forth and what have you, and it's not anything special. In other words, he debunked it. But they didn't need to do that. I mean, They didn't need to bring in a video from debunk. The hearing wasn't really about that. It was about what's happening at the UAP task force. And I didn't think much more than that. Well, toward the end of that hearing, though, he was asked about Malmstrom, at which he couldn't talk about that. So he basically said, I don't know about that. And thanks to Mike Gallagher for that. So it wasn't much of a hearing, and it was a little embarrassing. But it turns out the most important thing was that video, I think. So at some time subsequent to that, things started turning up over our military bases. This has kind of happened before, but it's been sustained. It's been going on now for quite a while. Not over the mountains, not over the cornfields of Nebraska, over military facilities, harking back to the days when they were hovering over our nuclear sites and turning the missiles off. And but this was not then. Everybody has a camera now, and so film started turning up about this, and it was notable, but it wasn't imperative to engage it. But then a couple of months ago, it took off, and suddenly you've got all manners of these type craft, these light craft, probably similar to the Foo Fighters of the 1940s. These balls of light that were following our airplanes around throughout the war. And it's a huge problem. They're right. Over sensitive facilities. That can't happen. You can't do that. You can't even fly some $50 drone with the little propellers over them. And so this was starting to get people's attention, and it was going to be a real problem for the U.S. government as it continued to escalate and spread. It was on the east. It was on the West Coast.
Right.
But finally, it really worked its way to the East Coast. And it's not just New Jersey. They're over Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Maryland.
Right.
And some lights have been turning up over Washington, D.C. So it's not a New Jersey thing.
Right.
It's an East Coast thing. And it's huge. And the videos are pouring in. It's also happening in the U.K. And so this is, as far as I'm concerned, the biggest UFO flap in history. There have been a number of them over the years. A lot of sightings take place over a period of time, certainly well above the norm. Then they call it a flap, and there have been a number of them. The most famous one occurred in Washington, D.C. in early July of 1952, almost exactly 5 years after Roswell, when lights were flying over Washington, D.C. and the Capitol for about 8, 9, 10 days, repeatedly, and there was nothing they could do about it. People saw it. They had to address it. They put out a statement and so forth. And then shortly after that, they convened a CIA panel to address the problem, which concluded, this is the Robertson panel, that whatever this is, it's not a threat, but the people getting really into it and interested in it, that could be a threat. And so we've got to stop and quell that interest. And thus began the formal Truth Embargo. All right, so that was considered a flap. This is hundreds of times bigger than that. All right? And so what, as far as I'm concerned, is happening, and I'm starting to get some support from others on this, is the reason the government, well, maybe this way, the government was going to be facing and was facing impossible to answer questions. And so they had to do something, but they didn't know what to do. They can't stop the phenomena, the larger phenomena, all right? They can't even acknowledge it, right? And what's flying over our military bases, sir? It's a non-human tech. We don't know where from. No, they can't do that.
Right.
And they can't, ignore it. In the old days, they could, right? No photos, just some phone calls, but no, hundreds of videos all over the internet being seen by millions. So you can't even acknowledge there's anything of substance. And so what they did, which was the best they could do, is they launched very large numbers of our military drones up into that airspace. And so if there was a display going on over a military base anywhere, whether it was in Florida or California or in New Jersey, they would launch military drones. They have lots of them, and most of them, many of them, we've never even seen them. Drone technology research has been ongoing and constant for decades. Building the most sophisticated, most maneuverable drones is now a mandate, national security. The future wars are going to be fought with drones, maybe just drones. They are capable of sinking ships, blowing up ammunition dumps, and whatever else. They're being fully militarized, and we have lots of them. And so they started sending up our own military drones into that same area. So if it's happening at night on the March 20th, then they would send up drones, right? And since they were flying over a lot of military facilities, it was easy. Now, why did they do that? They did it because once those drones were now being seen as well, pretty clearly drones. Some had propellers, little lights on them, little blue and green.
Yeah. It's easy to debunk.
They're seeing drones, okay? And so now you can now say it's a drone swarm, meaning it's all drones, all right? And while that's ridiculous, and any reasonable person that knows anything about this issue will immediately know that's not true. It's the best they can do. And so they created the drone swarm meme that would keep people a little more at bay, keep the press a little more under control. And yet, of course, the internet was not going to allow them to walk away. And so very quickly, the questions started coming. And I'm watching all this and I'm loving it too. I'm going, well, you are in a corner here. What are you going to do, DOD? And so the question was, are these things drones? Yes. Are they ours? No. Are they another nation's, which could be an adversary? No. What? Not ours? Not another nation's? Then what are they? We don't know. That is literally what the Department of Defense has said to the media. And of course, it's utterly absurd, obviously a lie, but they have no choice. Why? Okay, so they've gone ahead and put drones up to try to dilute the situation. In comes the media. The question is, are these drones? They can say that. Okay, are they ours? They can't say yes. They can't say there are drones. Because then the next question is, why are you flying drones over all the military facilities? And doing it for now a couple of years. Well, it's to test the airspace and so forth. And you're not notifying the FAA. They're rerouting planes, you know. Right. In other words, you have any reasonable explanation? They don't. And so they can't answer that question. So they have to say, no, they're not ours. And then when the next question comes, well, are they another nation's? Could they get off the hook by saying, yeah, they're another nation? They can't say that. In other words, you're allowing one or more nations to fly drones over our military facilities, and you're doing nothing, and you don't even know which nation it is. Department of Defense, they cannot say that. So they can't say, they have to say, we don't know what nation. Which leaves them to the final question, then what are they? They can't say what they are. And so they say, we don't know. And so that has been holding the fort for them for a while. The drone swarm thing is hanging in barely, but of course it's so ridiculous. It's creating all manner of chaos. And so you have the Iranian drone meme that turns up, where it's apparently a bunch of Iranian drones coming off an Iranian drone ship off the coast, which of course is impossible, because if that was the truth, they'd sink the boat, shoot all the drones down, right? And so, but that got into play, and then Chinese drones got into play. All right. And so that became a thing. And some people seized on that and said, yeah, these Chinese drones, like the balloons, are Chinese drones flying over our military bases. Yeah, like we're going to let the Chinese People's Army, the People's Liberation Army, fly drones over our military bases and do nothing. Well, the reason the Chinese drone thing got in there at all is because there were some Congress people that had raised the point, this is incidentally, that a lot of the drones that are being bought by Americans and hobbyists or whatever are made in China. And they wanted to stop the flow of these Chinese drones, I don't know, imbalance of trade or whatever, because they could have some tech in them or whatever the hell. And so they kind of seized on that. We had the Chinese drone. This is just a complete public relations disaster for the Department of Defense. The Air Force is not saying anything. They're staying out of this. I mean, this is a disaster. They know a disaster when they see one.
Right.
All right. And so what you have is a dual phenomena. All right. Real ET, non-human craft or objects of some kind, with our drones mixed in, trying to mitigate it from getting out of hand. That is what is going on and still going on. Right. Which then leads to the conclusion, why? And I've only got one answer. I only have one answer to explain why ET objects are out there like this, in this fashion, is that based upon the extended delays in the political process, the pushback against the UAP Disclosure Act, the political issues and manner of other things that have just prevented this thing from getting done, to getting disclosure done, factoring in that the risk of a major war, a nuclear war, a terrorist nuclear event is greater than it's ever been, and increasingly there are areas of the globe that are becoming very unstable. The ETs have decided to conduct an intervention. They are intervening deliberately in a careful way plasma balls, whatever, groups of them flying here, flying there. No saucers, no
Yeah.
structured craft, really. Just these, plasma balls or whatever the hell they're made of. You can't explain enough to, and knowing that half the population of the world has got a camera they carry around with them all the time. They're going to be filmed, put up on the internet. Put enormous pressure on the United States government, at least, to get this done, to end this embargo, to stop fooling around, to get this embargo done so we can move to the next stage. So I call it an intervention. Okay, if they're intervening literally on a broad scale over the United States and elsewhere, what is it that we are addicted to? What is the addiction that they're addressing? And the answer, I think, is simple. The human race is addicted to war, and so they're intervening to speed the pace where we can get to disclosure and hopefully start addressing the fact that we have to stop having wars.
Right. You mentioned that the drones that are being seen are ours, or they belong to the American government, that they fly to obfuscate the truth. Do you think? I mean, obviously these are really, really advanced drones because they are massive and they can stay in position for a long time, which means they have to be because most hobby drones that we know of can't stay in air for that long because they don't have that much power. These massive, school bus sized drones can stay and fly for so long. Do you think this advanced technology within the human drones are also reverse engineered from the UAPs? Because that's another narrative that I've been reading, about reverse engineered tech.
Well, there's reverse engineering of ET tech going on for 70 some years, so there is. And is it possible that some of the drones they're using are anti-gravitic drones? It's possible. I think it would be risky. And by the way, here's another reason why this all makes sense. One of the questions that we're asked is, you know where they're being launched from? No. And so remember, these have to be launched from somewhere, and they have to go back, don't they? I mean, eventually they have to go back. Certainly by the time the daylight comes, because they're operating in the daylight. But guess what? If they're military drones, they're being launched directly from the facilities underneath, and they're going back to the facility. Well, they know exactly where they're being launched from and so forth, but they can't say that. But that makes it pretty straightforward. We're launching the drones, they go up, they come back. That explains that answer, okay? So the drones are of different sizes. Some of these military drones are propellers types. Some have no propellers, whatever. They're putting up an array of our finest drones and making some of them very obvious with a red and a green and a white light in an odd position. That clearly is a drone, not an airplane. But without getting into anti-gravitics or reverse engineering, believe me, they have been spending decades and hundreds of millions of dollars to develop the highest technology drones they can. They can stay up for days if necessary, who have weaponization capability, surveillance capability. In other words, they're going to make the most sophisticated drone they possibly can, because that is the future of not only war, assuming we continue to war, but also the future of many other things. And they don't want to deploy this stuff. I assure you, they do not want this up there. They definitely do not want people shooting at them, right? They're not worried about them accidentally shooting a plane down. They're worried about shooting one of their drones down, right? And it lands in somebody's yard, right? And then the guy's walking out there looking at U.S. Air Force, and what is the, you can't do that. And so, we can't shoot them down. They're moving traffic around, but we don't know where they're from, and we don't know where they're going, or where they go back to, blah blah blah. Yeah. And that's where things are right now.
But has
in
this
the United States?
Sorry to interrupt, but has this happened where, obviously, with so many drones flying around, because I also read that they're not just flying over installations, but also homes and cities. So eventually, did one of them land in a park somewhere? Did something crash? Did citizens manage to get close to one of these military drones?
I don't believe so. However, the citizens are launching their own drones. They got little drones, right? They got their Chinese drones, and so they're sending them up, having some fun. And I think maybe one or two of those have come down. All right, but I'm not aware that any one of our military drones has crashed. They're not running into each other, but I'm sure they are built with sophisticated technology that prevents that. All right.
Right.
They're not
Right.
moving at great speed. They're not like a jet airplane. And so the idea that they have avoidance tech so that they cannot run into each other, I'm
Right.
sure is the case. And so we don't know of any that has landed in somebody's yard. Nobody has noted any crashing into each other. They have diverted airplanes over a number of airports. And when you say they're flying over neighborhoods, understand that a lot of our facilities, sensitive facilities, are in areas where there's population. And so
Hmm.
outside that facility, there's going to be neighborhoods and so forth. And so if you're over in a neighborhood and you're looking out, they may be over the facilities, but you can't tell that. And so I'm not. So I'm trying to dispel the idea that they're just flying everywhere. That is not true.
Okay.
I mean, everywhere is a big place. They are flying where there are sensitive military facilities. Why? Because if drones are flying over some small town in Kansas, who cares? Oh yeah, it's kind of odd, it's kind of awkward, but who cares? Whatever, it's all fake, whatever, it's fake. It doesn't matter. And so the DoD has nothing to say about that. But if they're flying over a military base, they're going to be asked about that. All right, or around a warship, they're going to be asked about that. And the ETs fully know that. So they are flying in places where the government will be absolutely forced to respond. It is, based upon the concept that I have, beautifully constructed. It is foolproof. They have painted the United States government into a corner, and it doesn't know how to get out. And if these craft don't go away like they have in the past, meaning you have a flap and then it stops.
Yeah.
If they don't go away, it's almost guaranteeing disclosure is going to happen. And I think we were on our way to disclosure, even if they weren't flying all over the place, because of developments politically. So you combine the political developments with this nice, ET intervention thing going on, and I think we're right there. I don't. I think you are based in India right now, are you not?
Yeah.
Okay. I do not know. Well, let me ask you: have there been reports of objects, particularly plasma type objects, flying over any military facilities in India?
Reports, no. So one of the reasons why I said, we're reading reports of this happening over New Jersey in the United States is that usually in India, this is not really, so even if it were a global phenomena, it doesn't really get that much coverage here because it's still kind of not mainstream. But the first indication that it was going mainstream that I got, so I personally follow UAP news, so I've been following this news all along. But then the mainstream media, you just see politics and movies and so on. But when this drone flap happened, I started seeing articles even in the mainstream media here, people talking about it.
Sure.
News channels and podcasts and everything. That's when I realized that people are starting to take notice. But then I don't see reports of these happening over sensitive installations here. Maybe it is, but it's just not. Maybe it's a reporting deficit. But there is this curiosity of what's going on over there. Most of the chatter is about what's going on in America right now, what's going on in New Jersey. That's how it's being painted. It's not nobody's looking at what's going on over our skies. That's not happening yet.
All right, so videos, Indian videos are not turning up on social media there, okay. And
Yeah.
that means that they're not doing it. All right, by the way, on my print media archive, I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of articles, English language articles from India.
Right.
Times of India, Times Now, India Today, another 3 or 4 of them. And so there's plenty of English language coverage for sure in India.
Yeah.
So I think Indian people are, I'm sure, quite aware of this
Yeah.
issue because it's in your media. But the ETs are not putting much focus there. I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
You are a nuclear power, but not the nuclear power that they're concerned about right now.
There have been since we talked about India, so there have been lights and strange things seen in the Himalayan region. That's been reported several times. And one particular thing that happened, so there's a little sensitive region in the northeast of India where there's been tensions going on, ethnic conflicts and everything. So I think sometime last year there was an orb that was seen over an international airport in that region, which stopped commercial flights for 3 hours, and that became a main story. So this to me is like a trend where they seem to appear over areas of conflict and strife and war.
Right.
What do you think of the news that happened recently about this guy who blew up a Tesla truck? And he was mentioning this, people are trying to connect that with the UFO thing, and how they're saying these are Chinese drones, and they were about to reveal he was a whistleblower and he was taken out and stuff like that,
No. Again, the truth embargo that the government's maintaining is constantly making fools of everybody, and opening a door for every possible conspiracy thinking, and digging rabbit holes and everything else. It's an insult to the collective intelligence. It's a waste of our time. It's almost a crime against civilization in a way.
Right. So I have spoken to people on the UFO topic on my channel who are basically scientists who are studying it, or journalists or astronomers. I think you're the first person who comes from the political spectrum, who is into political activism and lobbying for disclosure. So I wanted to get your perspective on what exactly happens here. So what exactly does a UFO lobbyist do? How did you get into this?
First of all, I'm a political activist.
Okay.
99% of what I do is political activism. 1% is lobbying. Right. The lobbying thing is because that's how I started. I registered on this issue with the Senate and the House on behalf of a number of organizations in the subject, right, who I contacted. I knew some of them. I said, look, I'm going to be registering as a lobbyist. I want to represent you. I'm not going to charge you anything. They go, oh, well, if it's free, go ahead. So I registered on behalf of a number of organizations as a lobbyist. Did I think I was going to be able to go downtown and start talking to everybody? No, they don't want to talk to me. 1996, they don't want to talk to UFO lobbyists. I have nothing to give them, no money, right? The issue is still debunked. So no, I couldn't lobby, but I was the first lobbyist, and because I did it that way is why I called it the Paradigm Research Group, because I was lobbying on the behalf of research groups, but I'm not a research organization. Okay, and so I knew what I was doing, because I knew that the lobbying registrations are monitored by the media, and so after X number of months, the Washington Post found out about this UFO lobbyist, right? I guess they call me. Yeah. And they're going, well, there's a story. And so they interviewed me, put a big story, and I have it. And I need to get that out in my web more. I have it, the page, that image of the page, front page of the business section of the Washington Post. Substantial article, not silly, and a giant photo of me. And that launched my career as an activist, because at that point, suddenly, I became known. The first UFO lobbyist, I was a thing. If I'd have had $400,000 or $500,000 in the bank, I'd have rode that sucker, and I would have done some pretty spectacular things. But when I started this work, I had nothing. I mean, when I mean nothing, I mean nothing. And so I've scraped and clawed and tried to hang in there ever since, and done what I could. But that's the lobbying thing. I'm a disclosure advocate and a political activist, and Paradigm Research does all kinds of things that are designed to service in one way or another the Truth Embargo process.
So how does it work? I'm just curious. How does it work on a ground level? For example, do you approach people, or do people come to you with their stories, or do you just go to the media? So, like, what does a day or a month or a week look like? How does one go about doing this? Is the question, because
it's not a 9-to-5 job. I'll tell you that, right? I'm my own boss. I do what I want when I want. I work all the time. Let me give you an idea of the kind of work that I've been doing for these years, and the kinds of things that I've tried to do to help this movement, what I call the disclosure process, the disclosure movement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to my website, and this is my website. So under projects, we've got one of the newer projects is Shiftstorm.
Okay.
The Shiftstorm is a project to show people how to send tag Twitter messages to members of Congress, all of whom have Twitter accounts, but not DMs. And so you write a message out and you put in at Senator Schumer, at Mark Warner, at Marco Rubio, and others like that. You can put all those in one message, and they all go to their notification boxes. where
Right.
their staff see them. And so this is a way to get basic message to them. Emails, you can do that too, but this in some ways may be more effective. And so the shitstorm's been underway for some time, going back to when they were trying to get the UAP disclosure bill through. Okay. And so, hang on, let me go back. Let's see, let me get back here. All right. And so there's that. And then so the ongoing projects, one of the most important one is the print media archive.
Okay.
And what this is a project I've been doing since 2006. I've managed to link 16,000 articles on UAP, UFO, ET stuff of disclosure in
Right.
basically professional media. Triage from, curated from maybe twice as many, 30,000. Because a lot of them are trivial or they're small publication, they're not really substantive. So these are relatively important articles. And recently, the numbers have exploded. The most I've ever put in 1 year was last year, 1,883 articles. And
Oh,
in this,
wow.
1,477 articles. So in 2 years, almost 3,300 articles, all related to this issue. And in some cases, I earmarked them, like the 2024 Arrow report that the Congress required, the election campaign and how it played out, the Pentagon Arrow study that was issued, it's completely bogus, the House Oversight hearing, referring to the November 13th hearing, the Senate Armed Services briefing, and then, of course, the drone swarms. Okay?
Right. Right.
Now, you see this green tag here. So as I scroll down, look for that tag right in here, right? Just see how many articles with that green tag have been published in the last 2 months. Look at that. It goes on and on and on. English language press, including 4 or 5 different Indian publications, Canada, UK, Australia, Singapore, and of course, the United States. And on and on and on. And so that's what I mean when I say that the issue is moving towards resolution. About 200 articles on the quote unquote drone swarms. And so this is a major project. It's a huge resource, and that is one of the things that I do. So another project, the Exopolitics World Network, which is going to be revitalized very soon. This section is I'm very proud of. This is the in memoriam section. And again, this is all activism, I assure you. In this section, I've tried to give some respect and acknowledgement to the people in the field that have passed, and we have lost a lot of them. And so there's information about these individuals behind their photo. And I don't know, I'm up to about 90, and these are people that have done a lot of work in the field. They're known, and they didn't make it. Okay,
Right.
And so the in memoriam section is, I'm very proud of that. And by the way, this is Emily Trim, one of the Ruha's aerial school kids that saw the 2 beings that landed next to their schoolyard
In Zimbabwe.
in Zimbabwe. She recently passed of cancer, and it's sad. It's unfortunate.
Right.
But she was a wonderful person. So again, that's another project. Okay, and then up here, let's go here. The Print Media Archive, the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance is another project. Now, I founded this a year ago with my co-founder Dan Harari in Hollywood. And what this is, it is a 501c3 networking entity designed to bring together people in the film industry,
Right.
content industry, and the people in the UAP world, our people, right? So that they can find each other, do deals, create content, make money, I hope to God, and get the message right.
Right.
And it's working. And so we have 2 kinds of founding members. We have Hollywood founding members, okay? Like these people here, whose primary career has been in the film industry, right? Okay, these are all Hollywood members. We've got about, 90, all right? And then we also have a second. Let me get all the way up. And we also have UAP members.
Right.
And these people that are in the UAP business, they're contactees, researchers, documentarians, all kinds of people. And they are also here. And so they're finding each other. They're finding people on the Hollywood side. Other people are seeing them through the website.
Right.
And we're going to continue to grow that. It'll probably pretty soon reach 200 members. So that's the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, and it's very, very successful. I think it's doing well. And then let's see. Let me go back here. Okay, again. Another project is let's see. Well, I have the YouTube channel, speaking tours, and so forth. Lobbying, actual lobbying. So this is a sample of the kinds of things I've done. I've also I've also held a number of conferences called the X Conference. Okay, and let me see if I have it here. The Extraterrestrial Phenomena Political Action Committee. That's a former project, and also the Exopolitics Expo is going to come back to life here very soon. Right. And that's going to be a significant project there. So that gives you a sense of the kinds of things that PRJ has been doing the last 29 years. And I'm over 2,000 interviews now.
Okay.
And what I couldn't have done without the podcast revolution, let me be clear.
Yeah, there's like a proliferation of social media platforms and podcast platforms now that, there's so much outlet for so many people wanting to talk about. I wanted to quickly get your opinion on two things since you mentioned Hollywood and money. Mm-hmm. So one thing that I saw was maybe in the past when this topic was a taboo subject, maybe nobody was willing to look into it. There was no money, there was no funding. But now, there's not just as public interest goes up, there are people who are coming out with books and, there's media houses covering, and there's obviously money coming in because it's not just people who want the truth to come out. It's also businessmen who want to make money on the side, who want to sell stuff. And there's a lot of money coming in, which you can channel into the disclosure for the cause and so on. So how has that landscape changed? Because how has money, that's one. And the second one related to that is Hollywood itself, because Hollywood traditionally has been projecting these images of aliens and UFOs and everything to the whole world. And people have long suspected that there have been some people like, Steven Spielberg or Stanley Kubrick or James Cameron who seem to somehow have some kind of connection through which, their images seem to portray possibly close to reality scenes, and somehow some truth manages to find itself to the public through these. So what's the connection there?
Well, let's put it this way: the powerful people in Hollywood, who many of which are multi-hundred millionaires, know there's an ET presence. You can be sure of that. There are too many people that would be happy to tell them. Right? So they know that. They have a close relationship with the Department of Defense in many cases because they use and rely on military cooperation with a lot of their movies. And so there's a close relationship. And there's probably a little bit of management going on. That's come out a couple of times. And yes, they are waking up. Believe me, I just spent most of the last 3 years in Hollywood trying to play the film game. And I tell you, I'm too old. And not enough experience because it is a brutal game to play. And so I've kind of stepped back from that, but I've made a lot of contacts and founded the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. But, they're waking up to the issue, and they're spending money. The big guys are spending money. The only problem is none of this money, very little of this money is going to all the people that did the work, all the people that carried the water for 70 years. And wrote did the docs with out of their own pocket, and wrote the books and studied thousands of sightings and so forth. They're not getting the benefit of this money. And so one of the most powerful men in Hollywood, J.J. Abrams, now has 2 documentary UAP series out. The first one was called UFO. The second one was called, I think, Beyond. I think just Beyond or Beyond something.
Right.
And a lot of money went into those. Right. But then Steven Spielberg he does his first non-fiction series, documentary series, called Encounters. And so big money there. And so the big shots are putting money in, and there's other docs in the works, I assure you, right? Hollywood knows a good thing when they see it. They've made a fortune, perhaps as much as $200 billion in ticket sales, product placements, licensing, and television, everything else, off of one genre, the extraterrestrial genre.
Right.
600 of all of the science fiction movies ever made had extraterrestrials in it. And they've racked up untold amounts of research. So on the subject of non-humans, they have made a fortune. So that's great, good for them. But now they see that there's a lot of money to be made with the real ones. And so they're going to get in this big time. And I just hope they reach out to the people that have really paid the price and made the sacrifice to get this information.
But what I'm concerned about is this like a two-way street, right? So just like they're helping the cause in some way, of course, the money is not flowing in the right direction. This channel can also be used by the powers to sort of manipulate and feed a wrong, image of.
They could. They have. The government has, from time to time, how would you say, encourage them to put out a certain message. And it's possible that there have been some instances involving this general subject matter where they've done this. One is well known, and it's telling because it's fairly realistic, because this kind of interference is way overstated. And everything is overstated in this issue because we don't know the real truth. But it is the making of Independence Day, which I happen to have a poster right around the corner here. Big movie, right? Huge. Okay, so they're making Independence Day, and if anybody's seen this movie, there's all kinds of military craft everywhere, and so they were working with the Department of Defense, the Air Force, to assist in being able to provide these kinds of things, right, to whatever they needed in order to create this wonderful movie. And the government was happy to do it because Independence Day is a giant advertisement for America and the military and all this stuff. I mean, it's like a poster. But at some point, somebody at the Pentagon kind of read the script and discovered that about halfway through the movie, they refer to Area 51. And as part of the plot, they're saying that the Roswell vehicle was eventually taken there, and then now they're going to Area 51. And they got in touch with the producers and said, look, if you don't take that out, you're not going to get any more cooperation with us with respect to access to hardware or anything like that. And the producer said, fine, go pound sand. So that is a kind of realistic, I think, assessment of the situation. In times we've agreed, the filmmakers have agreed, in times they haven't. But big manipulation of Hollywood in order to create complex propaganda agendas serving the deep state, that kind of crap, no. Right? These people are powerful, they're rich, and they're not so easy to push around. Now, I'm not saying they're all wonderful people. There's a lot of people that are evil as hell, but the point is that it's not as bad as you think. And now, as the stigma on this issue is completely gone,
right,
they have a free hand to go at this thing with everything they've got. And I'm hoping they're going to produce, hopefully with our help, some really big documentaries that might even get full screen treatment, right? Because in the entire history of this issue and the history of the film industry, not a single documentary about the UAP issue, ET, UFO, UAP issue, has ever been given film distribution, rented screens, right? Some filmmaker rents a screen and hold a couple of screens. I'm talking about distribution.
Right.
Never happened. Even though it's the biggest known issue in the world, and the interest is off the scale, and the fictional movies have made them billions, they have chosen not to put up a single doc. And that may be the best example of the film industry going along with a government program or agenda for their own best interest.
I've always wondered who is behind the truth embargo, because people say the government needs to come out with the truth, but then clearly it's not I mean, it's not a monolith. There are people who, even in the government, who have no idea what's going on, who have no access to information. Sometimes they say even the president of the United States is not read into what's going on. So who's actually behind the scenes, what they call the deep state? Who is that? Like, who is controlling it? Is there a face? So when you don't know who you're dealing with, how do you force their hand for disclosure? I mean, I know that you said in the beginning the NHI themselves are trying to force the hand, but from a human perspective, from our efforts, like who is this adversary that we are looking at?
Look, it's not as mysterious as people think. It's like asking who's behind the nuclear submarine program. Well, no, we can't. Even if we knew, we couldn't tell you. Okay, but somebody is. Is it a cabal?
Right.
No, it's the people that are managing the nuclear submarine program, and it's incredibly classified. Except we do know there are nuclear submarines. So the only difference between that and the ET issue is that in this case, it's like the other example where when you say who's behind the nuclear submarine, and the answer is what submarines? There are no nuclear submarines, and so it's like that. And so this has been a highly classified part of our defense and military intelligence issues that over the years has been managed by various people in various places. The Atomic Energy Commission, or the Energy Department, certainly the CIA, certainly elements of the DoD. In other words, there are people that have been in various parts of the government that are tasked with managing this issue. There's nothing shocking about that. And they operate in the highest levels of classifications, extreme levels of classifications. And so the government would be quite happy if not a single one of them was ever known by name. But there's going to be people, there have been a number of people that we do know that have been helping to manage that, but we don't know that that's what they're doing. It's a classified program. It's the most classified probably in the government. And so, but it is a program. It has managers. In the various early days, as they're trying to figure out what is going on here, the very first thing that happened is the president put together a group to sort of assess the situation and decide where to go, because they started with nothing. One day there are no ETs, or at least assuming there wasn't any events prior to 47, and there's some indication there might have been. But for most of the world and the government, well, one day there's, and then the next day there are. And how do we know that? Because the Roswell Army Air Force Base put out a press release saying that they had, a flying saucer. And so at that point, boom, they have to start dealing with this. And they've been dealing with it for 77 years. And the scope of their involvement and efforts and programs has just grown to become a massive, highly secret enterprise, which obviously condones or accelerates the process of conspiracies and speculation and all kinds of things, which is not particularly helpful, but is understandable. And that's what's going on.
What do you think of people like David Grusch and Luis Elizondo coming out? So obviously at some level they are being allowed, right? So there are certain things. So when they want to come out and make a statement, it's being checked in the behind the scenes. When the book that he came out with, Imminent, obviously he had to go through so much of background checks and so many checks before he was allowed to say. So obviously these people are being allowed to leak in a way, right? So does that mean even the deep state, there are people in there who are willing to come out with the truth now, or?
Point of preference here. The deep state is not something that I really talk about or deal with. It's a meaningless term to me. It has no meaning whatsoever. It's a catch-all phrase that is essentially a propaganda phrase, and it just isn't, to me, have any value whatsoever. And as we've moved closer to disclosure in the last 7 years, we're almost approaching the end. We're seeing people come forward that would never have come forward prior to 2017. And Elizondo was one, Grusch is another, there are others. All right? And so they're coming forward. And one of the reasons they're coming forward is that the resistance to it has significantly dropped. And so we're in a kind of a space where the government would prefer you didn't come forward, but they understand that we're near the end of this truth embargo, and so If you're going to do it, you got to do it. And so wisely, the witnesses, by and large, are following as many rules as they can. All right, and the government is going along with that. Okay,
Right.
so when Grusch came forward, he was saying some things which were probably out of order. All right, and he did that because he was getting threats, and he decided to go public on his own. And I don't think he got permission from the DOD to do it. I don't think he had their permission to talk to Ross Coulthart or Leslie Kean or Al Blumenthal, but I could be wrong. But he made some extraordinary statements which shocked everyone. And then things settled down, and he ended up testifying. And by the time he's gotten over that hurdle, he pretty much starts operating in a normal fashion. And you've referred to that. If you are a former member of the military, intelligence, or whatever, that with classified status and have seen classified things, you can come forward, you can write a book, you can be part of a movie, but you have to run it by the Department of Defense and their DOPSR program, right? This is a program where they review everything and anything that violates the secure, anything that they consider not to be a detriment to national security and doesn't violate some clear NDAs or what have you, you can say it. And if it doesn't, you can't. And so they edit it. Okay. And the interesting thing about that, which is come up, it's kind of amusing, is that if you intend to write a book and 20% of it is completely made up, right? But you're trying to cast it as being, this is what I know from my job, but in fact you're just making it up. They'll let that go. It's not violating national security. You want to make it up, make it up. And so that comes through too. I just want to point that out. And so Grusch was operating in the rules, and so was Elizondo. But Elizondo gave so many interviews, spoke so much, which was probably his role after the To the Stars Academy came out. A tough gig, by the way, for him. I think on occasion he probably said something that DOPSR would have gone, he should have said that. But overall, he was trying. Right. And this is true of the others. The people that are coming forward with broad, incredible claims that clearly would be incredibly classified, the chances are pretty good they're making it up. Okay? Right. So this is the way it should be. And the fact that they're being allowed to come forward only means more are going to come forward. There are tons of witnesses that have already come privately out, in a sense, that eventually are going to be seen and heard from. And more, there's unlimited numbers. Thousands and thousands of people have been involved in the UAP ET programs in classified world since going all the way back 70 years. And so there are unlimited number of witnesses that will eventually come forward as we move into the post-disclosure world.
Right. So just slightly, like, slowly shifting the focus away from this work to your personal beliefs, like, what do you think this phenomenon is? Like, have you had any personal experiences or seen something, or if you have to take a guess, if you have to speculate, since you've put in a life's work in this, what do you think these are? Are they being from another planet, another dimension, another time, or are they, some people say they are like a lost race of humanity which is cohabiting Earth with us underground and stuff like this? So what do you think?
Over the 29 years I've been in this, naturally I've developed a worldview about it that I cannot prove in full, though I certainly can make the case for. And I operate from that worldview. My model for what is happening here, it goes like this. The galaxy, the universe, but certainly, well, our galaxy, has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of planets. Hundreds and hundreds of billions of planets. And there's plenty of life throughout the galaxy. God knows what it looks like, but there's probably some commonalities because the physics and the elements are all the same on all of those planets as ours, right? The same exact building blocks. And so other sentient life is developed, and they have developed star-to-star travel. They are not from the future. They are not interdimensional. They are going from star to star. Okay, it's that simple. They have said that. They have told contactees that's where they're from. And I also believe that they've been engaging our planet as far back as you want to go. Maybe not the same ones,
Right.
but there have been ETs of some type or another engaging this planet, which is an extremely special planet. Go back as far as you want to go. 1 billion years? 500 million years? Our galaxy is 13 billion years old. Okay. So were they around in the ancient times? I think so. I think ancient aliens got a lot right, and ETs were engaging humans in a much more open way thousands of years ago. And there's enough evidence for that. It's just not beyond all reasonable doubt, but the evidence I think is quite compelling. And
Right.
ancient aliens is a very important resource for people to keep an open mind and not start ripping their hair out, and that eliminates all anthropologists. But so there's that. Okay, they may not and probably weren't the same ETs engaging us now, and that what's going on now is the modern engagement of this planet that gets really underway in 1945 with the dropping of the bombs. And so, based upon the contactee evidence, there's different types, 5, 6, 7, somewhere in there. They're all telepathic without exception. And to one degree or another, they all have a genetic connection to Earth, right? Which is very important and not discussed enough. So there's genetic connection to us. So of all of the potential species out there, and there may be thousands and thousands of them, which may have star travel, it doesn't shock me that the ones that are engaging us now, as we become spacefaring, really advanced civilization, able to see stars 13 billion light years from us, the ones that are here at this time have a genetic connection to us, as opposed to just any ET flying around. Right. And so that is happening. Contact is happening. Genetic research is happening. Hybrid children are being created. All right. The government has had an ET craft no later than 47 in bodies. Every president does know about the ET presence. Every one of them was told. To what extent and how much they were told varied a lot. It could have been nothing but, Mr. President, there are us extraterrestrials here. We'll deal with it. You don't want to go there. And the president probably went, oh, yeah, that's fine. I'm fine with that. But every president was known. And we have this massive program of engaging it that is highly classified. They have anti-gravitic technology and star-to-star trap technology, which may or may not be the same.
Right.
And they are harvesting blood and tissues from animals, particularly cattle. They are putting some crop circles down. And they are engaging us in a lot of ways via contact, putting messages in the minds of people, putting messages in the minds of school children, and so forth. That is my basic framework.
Right.
Which I have very high confidence in every component of that framework, but I cannot prove it to a panel beyond a reasonable doubt personally, though I think a group of people could probably do it. There is more than enough evidence to do that, but the money is not there. The stigma is only recently gone. So the way it's going to get proven is the heads of state are going to confirm the truth of it, the fundamental truth of it, and then the stuff is all going to start coming out, and in very short order, it will be obvious.
But do you think this will be led by the United States, by America, the president of the United States? Or because people say, what about Putin? What about Xi Jinping? Because there are so many other people who might have been thinking on similar lines. So there's got to be like some kind of a confluence of, people coming together and making a public announcement, right? So it can't just be America. No. It won't just be America.
No. It will likely be America, but it doesn't have to be America. I mean, I've given hundreds of podcasts where I specifically said Vladimir Putin could do it or Xi Jinping could do it anytime they wanted, And so why are you waiting? But all the other nations have either deferred to us or have chosen not to for ideological reasons. And so it looks as if it'll be the United States, right? And we will go first. And then the rest of the nations will follow pretty quickly. And the reason it's going to be a single head of state is that any effort to try to get together heads of state to kind of work out a special outing, it's going to leak. It's going to leak, and the whole thing will turn into a fiasco. And so they don't want to be having those kinds of discussions. I would be shocked if suddenly we got an announcement that the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and the Prime Minister of France and whatever, and the United States are all going to have a joint statement to make on Tuesday morning. I would be stunned. I think the odds of that are very, very slim.
What does a post-disclosure world look like to you? I mean, because obviously this, people talk of ontological shock, our understanding of reality and the universe is going to change, and technology with, unimaginable power will, become accessible to human beings. What is a post-disclosure world for you,
All of that, right? Ontological shock, I'm not crazy about the term. It'll be shocking. The degree of shock is far less than would have been in 1950, 1960. Now it's almost going to be 50% of the people in the last Gallup poll, which I think was like a week ago or something, said that they believe it's extraterrestrial. 50%. Now I think that was a U.S. poll, so that means 50% of the adults. So that's around 100 and maybe 30 or 40 million adults already believe that that's ET. And the other ones are probably leaning that way. So it's not going to be as shocking as people think. And we will get bored with it a lot faster than people think. But it will be a very big deal. And it's going to generate a massive explosion of media journalism. It's going to, it will certainly cement the disclosure process. And over the next couple of years, a lot of classified documents, information, materials, and so forth are going to be coming out of governments and into the public arena, not only here but in other countries. And so, do
you think the people who will be under threat will be the people in power, right? Because their control will be loosened over the population.
No.
You don't think?
It just means that that stuff is, a lot of stuff's going to be declassified. Over the years, the government has declassified hundreds of millions of documents that are formally classified, right? So the idea that, well, now it's not classified anymore, and you have this information. The government's still in control, I assure you. Don't stop paying your taxes because, well, now you know the ETs are here. No, people just naturally go to extremes, absent the truth, and also all the secrecy and everything else, and the nature of the issue.
Right.
Essentially, this is just a major classified program that was classified for obvious national security reasons in the late 1940s, and then remained classified because over the next 50, 60 years, we built up the largest cache of destructive weapons in the history of mankind, right, humankind, and threatened to use them all the time. And so the classified nature of this was not going to be yielded. There were too many unknown unknowns. In other words, nobody could really determine if we confirm their ET presence. Does that make it more likely that a nuclear war could take place? Is that going to disturb the force and suddenly somebody does something stupid? They couldn't ever really be sure of that. And so their attitude was, look, let's get the nuclear war thing settled. We'll get rid of the weapons and settle down. And then we'll tell the people. Except it isn't ended. And the only way it's going to end is we get rid of the nuclear weapons or we use them. Right. Right now, we're this close to using them. So it was a classified program that we're about to start declassifying because they have no choice. I assure you, if it wasn't for a 77-year effort on the part of thousands of people devoting their lives with almost no money, working out of their back pocket to do everything that needed to be done, the journalism, the books, the documentaries, the research, the study, everything, while the government said, all you're doing is nonsense because there's no there there. If it wasn't for all of that, we wouldn't be where we are now. And so, fine. Now we move to the next stage. Formal, institutional governmental engagement of the issue in the open, leading to disclosure, capital D, the announcement, and then a huge small d disclosure process continuing with the world finally learning pretty much everything.
Right.
And then it probably not far into the post-disclosure world, we're going to be in open contact. In other words, we're going to be having extraterrestrials having informational exchanges with governments, with authority figures, whatever. And we're going to be told that is happening, and we're to be given the nature of that discussion, which is what I refer to as open contact.
Right.
A person being engaged by an ET in their bedroom at 2 a.m. is not open contact. And so I think about 2 years from now, if we get disclosure next year early, which I think we're going to, probably in February, maybe March, then we should be no more than 2 years out from the open contact. So looked at it from that point of view, things are about to get really interesting.
So that's your timeline. So around 2027.
2027, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Right there, and that's just a ballpark guess.
Yeah.
Based on one thing: how long would it take the entire world to get relatively up to speed with the history of this issue, what we know, what the government knows and is now telling us? How long would it take for us to kind of have a learning curve and pretty much get on top of almost all of it? And I'm thinking, 2 years. But with AI coming on, and of course the internet just grows and grows and grows, it might just be 1 year. Okay, and so I'll go between 1 and 2 years of open contact. That's how close we are to a whole new history of this planet and the people on it. It's not it was wrong to do it, or even it was wrong to maintain it. The reasons for that are not hard to figure out, but they've simply maintained it too long until the embargo became more of a danger and more destructive than what might have happened if they told the truth. And so it's just past its shelf life. It's starting to poison everything.
Right. When it eventually happens, we just hope that they're all benign and there are no extraterrestrials with sinister intentions.
That would be nice. That would be nice.
Yeah. So on that note, I think we got to wrap up the podcast today. So thank you so much for joining, and I hope really it happens in this timeline, because a lot of people who have been putting in efforts to make this make the truth see the light of the day would want to see it happen in their lifetimes, I guess, and don't want to wait for several decades more. So I hope it happens. And
let me leave this with you, Raman. I've never been to India, though I've had colleagues who have. It's 20% of the world's population.
Yeah.
It's a big deal, right? So wherever they are with this issue, I assure you, they will advance very quickly. And I would love the opportunity to come to India and speak to large groups, make presentations about the subject from a more populist, activist approach.
I hope so too. Thanks so much, Steve. Thanks. Have a nice evening. Yeah. Bye-bye.
You're welcome.
Bye.